The only measure of democracy is where the body meets the state. The state can tell you what to do, how, where, and when to do it. And if you don't obey, you can be punished. To one extent or other, we agree to this. We accept this as legitimate, as the cost of living in society. Legitimacy and democracy find their limit when we vivisection a citizen and cleave from them their rights and their agency, and start fantasizing about a person being embodied in a heartbeat. The anti-abortion laws turn doctors into spies, eliminating any presumption of medical privacy or patient-client privilege. These laws also turn women into servants of the state. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege of talking to philosopher, bioethicist, and essayist Jon Weindenbaum here in New York City, and Susi Ferrarello, philosopher, bioethicist, educator, and author of the new book, The Phenomenology of Pregnancy and Early Motherhood.
The first strong signs against abortion comes with Pius IX, the ninth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are in 1922. So it comes at the same time where eugenics is a thing. If you read the encyclic Letter Casti Connubi from 1930, which is exactly on, the pure marriages, if you want, where he describes at length the aspects of marital life, he insists that children are not connubionus, so it's not something that weighs over the marriage, but it should be a blessing. Nothing against that, I think none of us. But then it says that abortion cannot be justified by any maternal or family problem, which is quite a statement, because it's always mortifero operation, or however you put it, it will bring to something dying. It's against a biblical commandment, of course. It's not a jus gladi, so we cannot think that abortion it's a self-defense, because after all it's a helpless being. We have to protect this defenseless being. Yet eugenics, and that was very surprising to me, if for good purposes, it's okay. So when science becomes something important in dealing with human life, it seems that the church has to take a strong stance. So contraception, what women should do in their marriage, how do we control demographics? It's curious to see how demographics is a worry for the church as well. Then we jump to Pius the 12th. We are in 1951. He speaks in October, November, and December of that year to professionals in healthcare, mostly obstetricians, gynecologists, and he repeats that it's difficult to accept any form of decision of the mother. The woman actually on the fetus, and this is what I found startling. It's difficult to foresee which life is more precious. That's what it says. Since we cannot know how this little life is going to develop. So, it might be that the mother is not even so important, because this child will become a political leader. So we shouldn't, for any reason, choose in favor of the mother's life. With Paul VI, things got hurtful I would say, as a woman, because he links abortion to the International Declaration of Human Rights, that we are in the 70s. So women are emancipating, they are trying to get rights to divorce, to abortion. We are getting closer to the time. And he reminds us how emancipation is not about women becoming similar to men, but finding their femininity. They have to improve their caring attitude toward other children. Wars are not the only reason that break peace, but abortion is another way to destroy peace. And here I'm quoting almost verbatim. There
Wow.
is mhm. Yeah, yeah. Abortion is likened to war.
I'm sorry, who is this?
We are talking about Paul the Sixth.
Didn't Mother Teresa also say something like
No,
that?
this is where this all comes from, and I don't think, again, if you sort of like are kind of sort of follow the church, you don't really realize, because you think of Paul the Sixth as this giant intellectual. You know, again, like there's even talk. They even say like Pope John the 23rd was just thrown in as a placeholder because Pope Paul the Sixth wasn't ready yet. He wasn't ready. He wouldn't take it yet. So there was all this hope for Pope Paul the Sixth, and he came out as conservative as you can be in a lot of ways. I mean, that's at least what we thought until Pope John Paul II. So I'm sitting in the parking lot outside of Ospedale San Gemelli, waiting for the Pope to die.
Ah,
The Pope John Paul had a troupe of these celibate young men that would follow him everywhere and chant and bang on drums. Oh, you could take a look at them. They were celibate, all right. Let me tell you. I mean, it was not even a question. And they would always stand there going, Santo subito, Santo subito. And you're just watching this, and it's like, wow, man, it's a weird world. Let me get back to Susi.
yeah, I mean, he praises Malta, for example. Malta in Europe is one of the strictest country against abortion. For no reason they can grant abortions to women. So abortion is full-fledged a crime against humanity, is a crime against human rights. Again, we are not thinking about the woman, we're thinking about male bodies and their properties. Then, I mean, Benedict XVI do not add to it, but it emphasizes what the church has already decided. So again, we have a speech in 2007 where he uses references to previous encyclic, and again, he considers abortion a crime against life.
And to be clear about that, that's abortion any moment after conception.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. From the very beginning, there's no grace period. Again, even if the mother's health is at risk, life is life, and yeah, that coming life somehow has to prevail over the mother's life.
Do you ever see, Susi, do you ever see any real, genuine communication between the Catholic position and any credible biology?
No, unfortunately, it's really, it becomes a kind of a philosophical discussion that is really to follow on also on a philosophical level, because then it becomes religious. And then it's painful because there are people who are believers and want to, feel the love of God, and they have to make a difficult choice, and they are rejected and they are not loved by God. I mean, look at what the church has done in Africa, for example. They were preaching against condoms, contraceptive of any kind. They were preaching against abortion. Nevertheless, these people had to become Christians or Catholic, even better. And for some of them, it was really important to hang on the faith of God, because it's a way to keep going in life, to build your value system. But then there's a cold rejection if you are about to die and you need to expel the fetus, or if you have been raped and you cannot carry on a pregnancy. I mean, any law against abortion does not stop abortion.
You know, I'll tell
It's
you,
just, yeah.
when I first arrived at the institution where I've been teaching now for full time, some 19 years, one of my students was a Chinese gentleman. He spent many years owning a factory in South Africa. And one of his workers, she came to work every day successively just more bruised and beaten looking. And eventually he pulled her aside and asked her, like, what happened? Like, what's going on? She said, well, I was gang raped. In this part of South Africa, there's no abortion permitted. So what I do is, day one, I jump out the first floor of a building. Day two, I jump out the second floor. Day three, the third floor, until either this is dead in my uterus or I die. One of the two, of course. And the story ends that he gave her a ticket to China and where she had the abortion. But that's a vivid and very stark illustration of the dangers of prohibiting abortion. You know, and the fact that it doesn't really stop abortion, but it's done in some pretty harrowing ways.
This has been a very Christian-heavy conversation, as it usually is abortion. What is the position of rabbinical Judaism?
Oh, well, it's interesting. So I was brushing up a little bit on the world religion. I mean, I'm passionate about the study of world religions. I teach courses on the subject. Judaism, generally speaking, it's not really considered person until close to birth, if not birth. So they don't have this. It's not the same kind of stress on granting it personhood earlier than that.
So not a lot of agonizing over ensoulment.
It doesn't seem. No, I don't know. But for a lot of the dharmic religions, of course, it's humans since conception. Because they're dealing with they have a different cosmology, different metaphysics, reincarnation. What's inside is a human being. Early on, and for some of them, there are, of course, you don't have the same. I was exploring a little bit of Hinduism on this topic, a little bit of Sikhism and Jainism. That doesn't seem to be the same level of ecclesiastical sort of like settled, rules about what to do with gray areas. When it's a threat to the woman's life or when it's going to be deformed. But generally speaking, there is it's looked down upon early on, abortion, because it's a human since conception. It's coming from, it's new rebirth, where it has lived before and now it's got to work out its karma, So generally speaking, there's a tendency to see abortion as morally wrong. And to see what's inside of a woman's uterus as a human being,
So does this mean that feminism is always going to be directly at odds with religion?
It seems that feminism tends to go against religion, but there's a nourished group of feminists that moves within religious tradition in the Catholic Church, in the Christian Church. When their theories become to start have a certain number of followers, troubles start. So it is quieted down. That's what I noticed. But, the Catholic Church desperately need feminism, and there is, the condition of nuns is unacceptable. And not only feminist thinkers, but scholars, Hans Jung comes to mind, wrote in favor of emancipation of women in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, but Hans Jung is like the Johnny Cash of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy who should have been Pope. He's the great. I mean, like,
oh God,
he was a genius.
Right.
Benedict's
Yes.
Benedict's arch nemesis. If you want to check out anyone's really fascinating, Hans Kong.
Sure.
When you guys, Susi, for example, in your community, when you guys do your research and you guys talk to the philosophers, the bioethicists, what's the consensus?
Well, the consensus. I mean, I was going to try to find the date of one or two of these articles, but the consensus. That's a great question, and I am part of the Empire State Bioethics Consortium, and we have very large Zoom calls. I don't get the sense of percentage-wise, but my overall sense is that a great number of bioethicists are for a woman's right to have that, a woman's reproductive right.
And Susi, what do you see?
Same here. I noticed that highly educated people tend to be in favor of abortion. And, another point that came up while Jon was talking and made me think about that is that maybe the common sense against abortion is also connected to how much we romanticize the idea of pregnancy. I mean, we have no idea, really, no idea about how hard a pregnancy is and how easy it is for women to lose their life either at birth or during pregnancy, or even more during the fourth semester, which is an expression that very little people know, because once the baby is out, we don't care about the woman anymore. Everything is done. Instead, the fourth semester is one of the most delicate moment, both for the life of the baby and the life of the woman for their survival. And that's when most of women die. Especially in the United States. I mean, the United States is one of the most developed countries, yes, where women's life is at risk. We have no idea how hard it is to bring a pregnancy to its end. And for some reason, women tend to be silent about that because there's this implicit agreement that we don't want to scare younger women who want to have children. And I think it's time to overcome this.
It's really interesting because I don't think people really understand the biology of a human being is not conducive to childbirth.
I recall telling my best friend's wife at some point, you look so wonderful. You just had a baby. You look. I hope that wasn't too kind of. She looked at me and she said, "Jon, my organs are in different places."
Exactly.
So.
No, I mean, but seriously, I mean, so like basically because the infant's brain size is too big, we have to be born without a skull so that we can squeeze out of the hips. Because it literally is. It's almost an evolutionary mistake when you think about it. That's the reason why we have to be raised for so long and educated for so long. Like whereas another animal, you see like a dog. A dog's born, 2 weeks after the dog's born, it's a dog.
We spoke a lot about religion and abortion. What do both of you make of, I was reading a little bit of Christopher Hitchens, who was more than an atheist. He was an anti-theist. He thought the notion of God was sort of like a totalitarian one. He wrote a book called God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. But he surprised many people, I think, when he came out in against abortion, and they asked him, how, you're atheist, how can you be against abortion? He said, well, purely on materialist scientific grounds. What's inside of a woman's uterus, we know through embryology and the sciences, that it's not a dog, it's a human being, and so he was. Very much, he was against. He said, for him the term unborn child is a real term. It denotes a real thing.
Susi, do you want to answer
that? I have to digest it. Okay, what I think is that everyone is entitled to a personal opinion and to decide what to do when that happens to them. But you cannot create a law. You cannot be in support of a law that decides for the body of everyone. That's the bottom line.
I think he did move in that direction.
Because
he did write an article
abortion
earlier.
is going to happen even if a woman is prohibited to perform it.
Right.
And she might gonna die in doing that,
Yeah.
as it happened for many other women, because it will be performed in an unsafe circumstance.
I can
And
tell you what I feel about it. And it's the same way the same position I have about Philip K. Dick,
Yeah.
who went all pro-life towards the end.
Yeah.
And I think there is a definite link between right-wing ideology and mental lapses and mental slipping, and thinking that you know what's best for other people.
But he wasn't right wing either. I'm just to throw it out there with Christopher Hitchens.
No, I mean, well, Hitchison towards the end.
Yeah.
I have to say, other than his embrace of Kurdistanian communism, I don't think you could trace in any way to being a left-wing person. I don't think he would. Towards the end, he's not a person who's calling for the nationalization of the oil industry or women's rights. He's calling for basically invading Islamic nations to liberate women to whatever standard he feels they should be at. And I think honestly, I think people who, want to fix the world have all these ideas about, women's bodies, as opposed to people like me who really admit complete ignorance about women's bodies.
How would both of you answer the question, or we can explore this question together? So if it's not human at conception, when can we say what's inside of a woman's uterus is human?
Kicking.
I'm still looking at certain people on the street. I wonder that question.
Oh, okay, good.
No, I mean,
I wonder about the man in the mirror. Am I human?
I mean, again, for me, this is totally an issue of this is a woman's issue with her own body, and
Gotcha.
it emerges. I mean, look, I got 2 kids.
Yeah.
I got 2 kids, and what I saw both times is a very clear extended body sense between my wife at the time and the babies.
Yeah.
That there was very little sense of separation, like that the child would cry and this extended body sense isn't particular to mother. It's exaggerated in motherhood. It's very there, but it's there in dancers. It's there in martial artists.
Yeah.
Tango dancers describe this extended body sense. So there's the idea that this is anything other than a woman's choice. To me, again, what Susi was talking about, that schema process. I saw that happen. And I've also seen when women are like, this has to stop. I truly believe that a mother decides when the child is human.
For me, it was a pregnancy that I desired. And it was a pregnancy that came after a miscarriage. So I was extremely careful to not attribute any human status to the embryo until I went to the translucent ultrasound. But for me, there was this life growing inside me. What I read and collected from the stories I put together for the book, I saw that many women who were experiencing ambivalence toward the fetus and toward the pregnancy, they stopped feeling this ambivalence when they felt the first kicks from the baby. So when there was the first movement. In phenomenology, we would call that perceptive pairing, which is, one of the steps of the empathy that tells you, there's something here that is similar to me because it has legs and I can feel these legs or these limbs that are pressing against my womb. And I can start empathizing with this stranger, as we were saying, with this something that is growing inside me, that is making me feel sick, miserable, with ups and downs, and so on. In interviewing women, I noticed that was a turning point. Sometimes ultrasounds become a way to lose the ambivalence, and as we saw before, they've been used to force this shift in the woman's view toward the pregnancy. As you said, it's deeply personal.
The single most life-changing experience that the students have ever had as human beings was, of course, having their first child. that moment was it just it recalibrated their whole center of focus away from themselves to this life outside of them, you know. And that to me is an overwhelmingly powerful kind of thing. So just thinking about that and listening to Susi, you describe about how women, when they feel this sort of presence in their body kicking, and all of a sudden there's an other there, you know, that needs to be loved or taken care of. I mean, this is the kind of transformative experience I've never had in my life. I've never been a father. I'm an uncle, but it's not the same thing. Does this make any sense at all in regards to your work in phenomenology and pregnancy and early motherhood?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm fascinated about how your identity changes
Yeah.
while it's not changing. And again, one something that should be noticed is that even early feminists, and here we are talking about Jung, about Kristeva, they spoke of this new being as fused with the body of of the mother. And we should be careful about talking of this fusion and pointing to this new life as a fusion, because in the fusion, the woman's body gets lost. Here we are really talking about two bodies that have to find a way to thrive from that point on. And it's extremely hard because there's a clash of will, there's a biological clash. You know, the mother might want to still enjoy her vitality, but in fact, she has to rest. Or her body needs vitamin, it needs iron, but it needs to go to the child. So on both a soul and biological level, we are in front of an intersubjective situation in which two bodies have to transform, have to come to being, have to come to life in a new way. So it's deeply transformative. Again, another. Now I don't remember the name of this scholar who compared the woman's body to a vessel. Again, it's not a vessel, because the woman's body is going to change forever after that. You know, a ship brings stuff from A to B without any change to happen. A woman's body will change forever after this life is coming to being. And it's not a given that a bond will form. Hopefully, a bond will create. But it's, you know, the cases of depression, we have to honor the struggles that a birth brings. It's clearly a miracle, it's a transforming experience, but we have to honor the struggles. And I think that in the debate concerning abortion, we don't see that. We still have a romanticized and very poorly curious idea of pregnancy. We are not curious about pregnancy and motherhood. A mother will make it.